Hello everyone, we are from Group 10 and we will present about symbolism in Trifles. This is our members. The first is Amelia Waqidatuzzarima, second is Syahra Salsabila, the third is Yowana Andan Mayoreta, the fourth is Rifqi Vaian Fadhlullah, and the last is Yasyfa Saffanah. Here, as symbols in Trifles, there are Trifles, the dirty towel, the dead bird, canning jars of fruit, the preserves, the quilt, the bird cage, the rope, the stove, and the sewing.
Okay, I want to explain about the first symbol, that is the trifles. What does the trifles mean? Some people might know what it actually is. Trifles symbolizes little things the men don't pay attention, yet the women do. Little things they don't notice in the play are the blank cage, the quilt, and the dead bird. Only Mrs. Peters and Mrs. Hale notice those things. Trifles symbolizes the importance of the topics and items that concern the woman in the story, as this concern provide the woman with the insight to understand the motive of Minnie's crime. The men who arrogantly assume that women's interests are trifling and unimportant are blind to the importance of this item in the investigation of John Wright's murder and to the importance of women's concern and situation in general. Okay, so the next symbol is the dirty towel. This is one of many out of place objects in Minnie's kitchen that caused George Henderson to accuse her of being a poor housekeeper. The disarray of Minnie's kitchen demonstrates a distressed mind and that Minnie's act of killing her husband was more emotional and dramatic than her demeanor indicates. In addition, the mess in the kitchen symbolizes the ways in which the men in the play expect women to fulfill certain gender rules. Minnie's not John is held responsible for the state of the house and is seen as unit for her role of wife. As a result, it is precisely this sort of judgment and the fact that the men are so comfortable in judging women that isolates Minnie in the first place.
Hello, my name is Syahra Salsabila and my student number is 73. And the next symbol of trivial drama is the canning jars of fruit. The canning jars of fruit represent Minnie's extreme concern over her role as wife and her household responsibilities. This concern is the product of the pressures society has placed on her as a woman and wife, teaching her to fear the judgment of men if she doesn't adequately fulfill her expected role. This fear is clearly justified as the men rebuke her housekeeping abilities while also laughing at the other women's concern over trifles. The women are judged for both too much concern and too little concern about housekeeping. And the next symbol of trivial drama is the dead bird. The strangled songbird that Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Peters discover symbolizes John Wright's abusive treatment of his wife. Minnie is linked to the bird through Mrs. Hale's memories of her as a young unmarried woman who liked to sing. Like the dead bird, Minnie was once bright and filled with life, but its energy and vitality was strangled out of her by life with John Wright. By her married life caught in a patriarchal society living with a hard man, the bird also symbolizes Minnie's need for companionship in her childless home, and the death of the bird showed that John not only didn't acknowledge this need, but actually removed her remaining source of happiness in a cruel and brutal way.
Okay, the next symbol is the quilt. Mrs. Hill and Mrs. Peter decide to bring the quilt to Minnie in jail, another one of the trifles that the men believe only concern women. The quilt and Minnie's decision to finish it in one of two styles, which is quilting or knotting, is developed as a metaphor for her innocence or her guilt. The act of knotting a quilt is linked to the act of killing a man with the rope around his neck. The play ends with George Henderson asking the women how Minnie was going to finish the quilt. Mrs. Hill's certainty that she was going to knot it symbolizes the women's certainty that Minnie killed her husband. Let's move to another symbol, namely the preserves. Both literally and symbolically, the act of preserving is something for the future. In this case, storing some of the sweetness of summer to enjoy in the depth of winter. But Mrs. Fritz preserves untended freeze in the cold. Like the preserves, Minnie Foster stuck in a cold married with a cold man, shatters and she is unable to preserve her former self.
The next is the birdcage. The birdcage is a symbol of Mrs. Wright's life as a whole and how she had limited space and freedom. The cage leads Mrs. Peters and Mrs. Hale to the real evidence. They try to finish the quilt for Mrs. Wright, and as they look for scissors, they stumble upon the deceased bird. Mrs. Peters mentions that someone had wrung the bird's neck. It shows there is a clear distinction between man and woman roles. And the husband is out working all day and she is forced to stay home in her cage. And the next slide is the rope. The rope is a symbol of her revenge and a rebellion against her husband. It is the rope used to strangle Mr. Wright. He had strangled her beloved pet, which was the only thing keeping her company when he was always gone. So, out of revenge, she took the rope and choked the life out of him.
The sewing. Trifles is set roughly 1900, in a time when women were expected to be highly skilled at sewing, especially in rural locations like small-town Iowa, as there simply weren't stores or professional nearby where one could easily buy or order replacement. As a result, hem-stitching from this period was often as regular and organized as contemporary machine stitching. Stitching as regular as Miss Reed, therefore, served was an immediate sign of her emotional state, whereas she has previously been unable to hold things together. With knit stitching, after her bird is killed, she starts to unravel. The stove. The whole stove and where characters stand in relation to it also relate to the theme of gender inequality. It is winter, so when the group of men charged with investigating Mr. Wright's murder enter the Wright home, they are cold. The men quickly cluster around the stove and seem to take it as their right to do so. By the contrast, the women hang back, voluntarily accepting a lesser position, one that is literally is comfortable. Ironically, the women, despite being physically colder, are much warmer characters than any of the men. They connect to and empathize with each other and with Miss Wright. Thus, the stove becomes a symbol of it or the lack thereof.
Okay, I think that's all from our group. Thank you for watching and goodbye.